have to pay people. People are waiting for me to pay them, and I can't without, getting their money, which is why we need to set up a cash flow, that has a big buffer to it. So, I mean, that, all you can do with that is learn from your mistakes, unfortunately. And build them in, I now expect that my clients will not pay me on time. So we build this buffer, we send polite reminders to them, and we give positive reinforcement when they do pay us. But in the form of what? In the form of, thank you so much, we really appreciate it, you're a great client. Yeah, exactly. We've also tried negative reinforcement when they don't pay on time, and that has met major resistance. Shockingly. So.
In Israel, don't ever discount how important it is to yell and shout. Raising your voice is very effective in this country.
Yes. Threatening to stop working is very effective.
Ninio, pending legal action,
And the only other piece on the cultural side that I'm still struggling with is that there's a very gray area here between personal and professional. A lot of my clients act like family, but there's a limit to it. They might invite you to all of their family events, have you for Shabbat dinner, hug and kiss me, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to paying on time, it's like there's a disconnect, You think that they treat, people who treat me like family in the States seem to have been, they look out for my interest, and I understand it's respectful to pay on time. Here, family never pays you that coming up. So, understanding that separation between personal and business has been a constant eye-opener for me here.
Okay, I'd like to open up the thoughts, questions from you guys. Yep.
I wanted to ask Ben issues with his cars.
It took a long time. It's actually, we in the 9 months that we were working beforehand, that's one of the issues which we dealt with. We found an insurance company who, with the right premiums, was willing to insure us initially. And now we no longer insure cars. I mean, when you get to a certain critical mass of cars, then no longer pays to insure them. So when we got to that mass, then we stopped insuring. But at the beginning,
So if somebody doesn't bring back the car?
we have a lot of ways of finding the car. I mean, our technological system is in essence also a security system. And we're a subsidiary of Shagrir, who's a subsidiary of Pointer. Pointer is like one. Essentially, if you get a car lost or stolen, so they've got a service where they send out a whole bunch of crazy people on motorcycles. They can't. Our systems are quite sophisticated. So as soon as you start getting within certain red zones, we get warnings, and we actually have people living along the borders who jump out of those bikes and stop them. It's happened. The West Bank is more complicated. Gaza is no problem. West Bank, we've had issues, but it's part of the issues.
Another question for Ben. Just a quick background. So I just started a electric vehicle company in Pittsburgh just this past year. And so what you're doing is very interesting to me. We're actually leasing our vehicles right now because we just started small. And what I wanted to ask you about is sort of how you went about planning for fast growth, because that's what we're really trying to do now. So some of the obstacles and how you went about sort of pursuing that.
So firstly, cash. Growth is cash. I mean, you can't grow quickly without it. There's no other way to look around it. I mean, even if the business is in essence. Cargo, by the way, is still losing money. On purpose now, as opposed to anything else, but because a company which grows 15–20% every month, you need a lot of cash to be able to feed that. So that's the most important thing is getting that closed. And then it's just preparation ahead. I mean, essentially, I don't know what your marketplace is, but with us, we knew that we had to move very, very quickly. So everything had to be planned beforehand. Insurance, for example, it's not like we can start up and then, okay, oh shit, we've got this problem with insurance, what do we do? Everything had to be done beforehand, whether it was the legal, whether it was the operations, whether it was, it's really just going through everything, the marketing, everything has to be ready so you can just pull it out of your pocket and fly it. That's the only thing. Also, I mean, just with growth, I think Evan said it as well in different words, but you've got to be really careful of it. I've seen the company go through different sort of stages. We've had all sorts of consultancy people coming in or whatever, but the business it goes from its infancy stage really where you're those 3 or 4 people where you're just working, everybody's doing everything, you don't have to be so organized, and then suddenly you have a worker or 2 workers, then 3 workers, and suddenly you find yourself, okay, there's 12 workers or 13 workers, and you've got a lot to do, you're still the shotef, the day-to-day, there's always a lot of work to do, but that's part of the planning. So for example, I'll give you examples, operations. You have to manage a fleet of 200 vehicles spread over a wide area. You've got to keep them clean. The simplest thing, you've got to keep them clean, because otherwise people aren't going to drive them if they're not clean. And so it's the type of problems where you have to sort of work out all the processes and how it's going to work and who's going to do what, and if there's going to be an IT system to support it or if there isn't, and pen and paper, everything has to be worked out beforehand. And if we hadn't have done those 9 months, then we would have drowned, because you've got so much work. Once you're up and you're running, phones are buzzing and things are happening, you don't have time to go and spend those 3 or 4 days sitting down, okay, what's the best way to do it? And if you don't do it the best way, you'll end up wasting a lot of money, a lot of effort. So it's just planning and thinking of everything you possibly can, and use other people. I know people are afraid of exposing themselves. I'm a big fan of exposing yourself. Take your idea, bounce it off somebody else. I'm operations, so parking. We pay people who've been working in the parking industry for a long time. We pay them a few thousand shekels to say, okay, this is what we're planning on doing. What do you think? It's worth it. You have to understand what you know, and also you have to know what you don't know, because no one knows everything. Then find someone who does know.
How many members do you have?
We've got about 6,000 now. Yeah, 5 or 6,000.
Those are regular?
Not all. A large portion of them, all sorts. And it could be for some people, for example, we've got a huge peak when it rains because all the people who are motorcyclists want to use cars. So it's a real mix.
To establish the same business in your home country, do you think it would have been easier or harder?
I actually don't think that it would have worked in Australia because I think that the market is very, very different there. There's much bigger areas, much less population density. Sorry?
But it
would have been much easier. The actual building the company would have been a lot easier. I'm pretty sure of it just because I've spoken to a lot of people in other countries who've done exactly what we've done, and they draw drops and we tell them what we have to do.
I think for us, we were fortunate in the case of Israel that there's no competition. We're in my home country of Australia, there's 5 or 6 companies doing what we do, and then basically it becomes a whole price competition battle. But for us, in the very beginning with only guys doing it, and even 9 years on, we're still essentially the only serious player in the market, like in Israel. And I really believe for Olim that come to Israel with a good idea of the concept that exists in the home country that doesn't exist here, you've got such immense opportunity to take that concept and execute it, and then run with it.
The United States is saturated with professional fundraisers, whether it's political or nonprofit. So I would have been a fish in a full pond of fish there. Here, Israel's always relied on money coming from overseas to fund their nonprofit programs, but until about 4 years ago, it was unconditional giving. It was blank checks. It was kind of what they call the days of the mufflers, where you send Teddy Collick over, you send over a few big names, and they come back with millions of dollars just because they asked for it, no conditions. Since the economic crisis in 2007, was it? 2008? It's a whole new ballgame, and it actually requires strategy, it requires a systematic plan, it requires a much more hands-on process of fundraising than almost any Amidah in Israel has ever had to do before. So the game has changed just in time for us to come in and provide this professional service to people. So we had good luck with our timing as well.
I'll take a couple more questions.
So all of you, you've all mentioned about having partners. I don't exactly. Yeah, you do have partners.
The 55-year-old man, yes.
Yes. Sorry. And you're saying obviously the partner complements that part of you that you don't necessarily have. For example, the maths and the accountancy, which I'm terrible at. But I don't necessarily need, like in my mind, a partner. Is it essential, firstly, to have a partner in your opinion? And secondly, financial-wise, is it better to get a partner who's good in that area, accounting, if you're not, or to get an accountant to invest in